Welcome to Horror 66. Today's chilling tale was sent in by one of our viewers, and I'm excited to share it with you. The story you're about to hear is one of suspense, mystery, and the unknown, a perfect fit for our channel. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode of Horror 66. And if you have a story you'd like me to narrate, feel free to share it in the comments below. Who knows, your story could be featured in the next video. Now, turn off the lights, sit back, and prepare to be haunted by tonight's terrifying tale. I was never the type of person who got easily scared. I always considered myself a skeptic, someone who looks for logical explanations for things others consider supernatural. Maybe that's why, when that phone call happened, I initially didn't give it much importance. Now, thinking about everything that unfolded since then, I realize how foolish I was. It was a night like any other. I had spent the day at work, dealing with a flood of emails, endless meetings, and demanding clients. When I got home, all I wanted was to relax. I took a hot shower, ordered a pizza, and plopped myself on the couch, ready to binge-watch my favorite series. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. when I decided it was time to go to bed. The house was silent, the only sound being the faint hum of the ceiling fan. I got up, turned off the lights, and headed to the bedroom. Already in bed, I closed my eyes, letting sleep slowly take over. That's when my phone rang. I opened my eyes suddenly, surprised. Who would be calling at this hour? I grabbed my phone, expecting to see a message from a friend or, at worst, a work notification. But it was a call from an unknown number. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it. But for some reason, I felt an uncontrollable urge to answer. I swiped the screen and held the phone to my ear. "Hello." My voice came out hoarse and sleepy. On the other end, I only heard static, a faint interference that seemed to come from far away. "Who is this?" I asked again, now more alert. The static continued, but after a few seconds, I heard something. A whisper. I couldn't understand what was said, but that voice. There was something wrong with it. Something familiar yet distorted, as if someone was speaking through an old radio. I stayed there, with the phone to my ear, waiting for the voice to repeat, but only silence answered. When I finally hung up, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was just a prank, maybe someone dialing by mistake. Still, there was something about those seconds of static and the whisper that left me uneasy. I turned in bed, trying to push the incident from my mind, but I couldn't. That voice, that whisper. Who could it have been? And why did it sound so familiar? I closed my eyes and forced myself to sleep, but slumber didn't come. Every time I began to doze off, the sound of static echoed in my head, pulling me back to wakefulness. The feeling of discomfort only grew, as if something or someone was watching me. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, exhaustion overtook me, and I fell asleep. But my sleep was disturbed by strange dreams. I dreamed of dark hallways, an ajar door, and that voice, always whispering but never loud enough for me to understand. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head, as if I hadn't slept at all. The sun was already coming through the curtain slats, and my alarm hadn't gone off. I picked up my phone, and the first thing I saw was the record of the previous night's call. 11:53 p.m. Unknown number. I thought about calling back, but something stopped me. It was better to leave it alone. During the day, I tried to forget what had happened. Work was always a good distraction, and I threw myself into tasks, trying to push away that unsettling feeling. But by late afternoon, I started feeling a weight on my chest, an anxiety I couldn't explain. I got home earlier than usual, determined to distract myself with anything that could keep my mind away from that call. I made dinner, turned on the TV, and forced myself to laugh at programs I usually found funny. But nothing worked. With every passing minute, my anxiety grew until I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed to understand what was going on. I decided to do something I would normally never do: call back the unknown number. I sat on the couch, took my phone, and dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. And then the call was answered. "Hello." My voice trembled slightly, but I tried to keep it steady. Once again, on the other end, I only heard static. But this time, I didn't wait. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I actually felt. The static continued, and for a moment, I thought no one would answer. But then, the same voice whispered again, "Help me." My heart raced. It was the same voice, the same tone. "What do you want?" My voice was now filled with panic. "This time," the voice responded, and what I heard made my blood run cold. "I'm in your house." Frozen, I looked around the apartment. Everything seemed normal, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. There was no answer. The call dropped, leaving me with deafening silence. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my whole body was shaking. This couldn't be happening. I slowly got up, still holding the phone, and started walking around the apartment, checking each room. I went to the kitchen, then the living room, and finally the bedroom. Everything was exactly as I had left it, but the feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me. I went back to the living room and sat on the couch, trying to calm my thoughts. I started to rationalize. Maybe it was a bad joke or even some kind of scam. But what about the voice? Why did it seem so familiar? Then I realized something that made me shiver again. Throughout my search of the house, I hadn't checked the basement. The basement of my house was never a place I frequented. It was an old space with stone walls, damp and dark. I kept some things down there, but I rarely had reasons to go down. At that moment, however, it was as if something was pulling me toward that door. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, and went to the basement door. It was closed as always, but now it seemed more imposing, almost threatening. I held the doorknob for a few seconds, hesitating. Something told me not to open it, but another part of me needed to know what was happening. Finally, I turned the knob and opened the door. The cold, damp air rushed up, enveloping me, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I descended the steps slowly, each step echoing off the stone walls. The light in the basement was weak, barely illuminating the space. I looked around, my eyes trying to adjust to the darkness. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. That's when I heard a sound. A faint whisper, almost imperceptible, coming from the darkest corner of the basement. "I found you." The voice was the same as the call. Cold, chilling. My heart raced, and I felt panic spread through my body. I wanted to run, get out of there as fast as possible, but my feet felt rooted to the spot, as if an invisible force was holding me in place. "Who are you?" I shouted, but my voice sounded weak, almost lifeless. From the dark corner, something began to move. A shadow, an undefined figure, that seemed to approach slowly. My eyes struggled to focus, but the darkness seemed to swallow everything around it. The figure stopped a few meters from me, still cloaked in shadows. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its presence, strong and oppressive. "Help me," the voice whispered again, but now it was closer, almost right next to me. I recoiled, stumbling over something and falling to the ground. I looked up, expecting to see that thing advancing, but it simply stood there, motionless, watching me. With tremendous effort, I managed to get up and ran towards the stairs. I climbed the steps 2 at a time, feeling fear consume me with every step. When I finally reached the top, I slammed the basement door shut and locked it. My breathing was ragged, my body trembling, and the panic still gripped me. Whatever was down there, I didn't want to find out. I picked up the phone again, with shaking hands, and called the police. While I waited, the feeling of being watched didn't diminish. I stood by the basement door, waiting to hear any sound, anything that indicated that thing had followed me. But all I heard was the oppressive silence. Finally, the police arrived. I explained everything to them, my voice trembling and broken, trying to sound as rational as possible. They searched the basement, but found nothing. No clues, no presence, just emptiness. One of the officers tried to reassure me, saying it was probably just my imagination, or maybe someone playing a bad joke. But I knew it wasn't that. I knew what I had heard, what I had seen. When they left, I was alone again, and the feeling that something was wrong returned, stronger than ever. The following days were marked by an increasing sense of unease. I couldn't concentrate at work, and even when I was away from home, my mind constantly drifted back to the basement. I avoided going near it, and the fear that something might still be down. There became a constant presence in my life. It was then that I began to experience strange occurrences. Items in my house seemed to move on their own, and I would hear unexplained noises at night. I tried to dismiss them as coincidences or figments of my imagination, but the paranoia continued to grow. I felt a deep, unsettling connection to the basement and the dark figure that resided there. One night, as I was lying in bed, the phone rang again. The same unknown number. My heart skipped a beat, and I hesitated before answering. The terror and curiosity had blended into a morbid fascination. I answered the call. "Hello." Static filled the line, louder and more intense than before. I braced myself for the familiar whisper, but instead, I heard something else. A distorted, eerie message. "You're not alone." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. The response was chilling. "Look behind you." I spun around in bed, my heart racing. The room was empty, and I saw nothing out of place. But the feeling of dread was overwhelming. I turned back to the phone. "Who are you? What do you want?" The voice answered, more urgent this time. "The truth is buried in the basement. It's connected to you, to your past. You must confront it." The call ended abruptly, leaving me with a sense of impending doom. I knew I had to face whatever lay in the basement, but the thought of returning there filled me with terror. The messages and occurrences were no longer just figments of my imagination. They were becoming increasingly real and menacing. Unable to ignore the voice's demands, I decided to confront my fears. The basement was a dark reminder of something I wanted to forget, but I had no choice. I had to uncover the truth and face whatever was haunting me. With a sense of dread, I made my way to the basement door. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the air was thick with tension. I unlocked the door and descended the stairs once more. The basement was just as I remembered, cold, damp, and filled with shadows. The figure from before seemed to have vanished, but the oppressive atmosphere remained. I felt as if the walls were closing in on me, and the whispers grew louder. I reached the dark corner where the shadow had appeared. As I approached, I noticed something peculiar on the floor, a series of old photographs and documents scattered about. I picked them up, my hands shaking. The photographs were of people I didn't recognize but felt strangely familiar. faces from another time, another place. The documents were filled with names, dates, and locations that meant nothing to me. Yet, they seemed to tell a story that was intimately connected to my own past. As I examined the documents, memories began to resurface. Fragments of a life I had long forgotten. I remembered a time before this one, a different life, and the terrible event that had led me to lock away the truth in the basement. It was a crime, an act of betrayal, and it had left a deep scar on my soul. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place as I read the last document. It was a confession, written in my own hand, detailing the crime and the reasons behind it. The realization hit me with full force. I had been running from my own past, from the person I once was, and the figure in the basement was a manifestation of my guilt and regret. With a heavy heart, I knew what had to be done. I had to confront the truth and seek redemption. I went to the corner of the basement and found a hidden compartment behind the stone wall. Inside, there was a small, dusty box. I opened it to find an old journal, filled with my own writing, detailing the events I had tried to forget. I read through the journal, reliving the painful memories and the terrible choices I had made. The shadowy figure in the basement was a representation of my past self, trapped in a cycle of guilt and remorse. As I finished reading, I felt a profound sense of relief. I understood that to move forward, I had to acknowledge my past and make amends. I closed the journal and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. I left the basement, locking the door behind me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The whispers had stopped, and the feeling of being watched was gone. I had faced my demons and reconciled with my past. But even now, in the quiet of the night, when I'm about to fall asleep, I sometimes hear a faint whisper in the back of my mind. And I wonder, will I ever truly be free of the shadows of my past? Or will they continue to haunt me, no matter how far I run? Thank you for listening. I hope you found tonight's story as spine-chilling as I did. A big thanks to our viewer who shared this eerie experience with us. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more haunting tales from Horror 66. If you have your own story to share, remember to leave a comment below. I might just narrate it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe and keep the lights on.